You know, there are some places that are so much more than just buildings. They're ideas, they're stages. And at the end of the National Mall in Washington, D.C., there's one that might just be an American temple.
On one level, sure, it's a monument, a truly massive monument to the man who saved the Union. But it's also a symbol, right? A symbol of the country's highest and maybe hardest to reach ideals.
And it became a stage, a place where America has argued and celebrated and demanded that those ideals finally become reality for everyone.
So that's what we're going to get into. How in the world did a plan that almost everyone argued about turn into the nation's most sacred public space? What is it about this place that gives it such incredible power?
All right, let's get the basics down first. We're talking about the Lincoln Memorial, honoring the 16th president. The architect was Henry Bacon, and that absolutely unforgettable statue was done by Daniel Chester French. It was dedicated way back in 1922, but believe me, its story started long before that, and it was anything but an easy ride.
And yeah, that difficult birth, that's where we're going next. Because building an icon, as it turns out, is never as simple as it looks.
So, the site they picked for this grand monument was, well, it was this. Seriously, when they decided on West Potomac Park, it was basically just reclaimed swampland. People freaked out, calling it a mosquito-infested mudflat that nobody would ever visit.
And yet the commission had a vision. They saw past the swamp. They pictured this grand temple at the end of the main axis of the whole capital city, perfectly aligned with the Washington Monument and the Capitol building. They didn't see what was there, they saw what could be there.
And the location wasn't even the only fight. The design itself was a huge controversy. A lot of people argued that this giant fancy Greek temple just felt wrong for a guy with Lincoln's famously humble roots. They pushed for something simple, maybe a log cabin shrine. But in the end, Henry Bacon's grand neoclassical temple won the day.
And you will not believe how long this all took. The first whispers in Congress for a memorial started right after he died, back in the 1860s. But it took until 1910 for a bill to actually pass. From the initial idea to the dedication, we're talking about more than 50 years. Turns out, getting a whole country to agree on something takes a while.
Which brings us to this really profound and deeply uncomfortable fact about its opening day. It's 1922. They're dedicating a monument to the, quote, great emancipator. And at that ceremony, the most prominent black guests were told they had to sit in a separate, segregated section. That one detail tells you so much about where America was at the time, and it perfectly sets the stage for the memorial's unexpected future.
So let's actually look at the building itself now, because all of this symbolism is literally carved right into the stone.
Okay, so the first thing you notice from the outside are those giant Doric columns, right? Well, there are exactly 36 of them. Why 36? That's how many states were in the Union when Lincoln died. The building is literally wrapped in the very Union he fought so hard to hold together.
Then you step inside, and you're surrounded by his words. On the south wall, the entire Gettysburg Address is carved into the stone. It's a permanent, towering reminder of what the Civil War was all about.
And then you look up. The statue of Lincoln is just immense. It's 19 feet tall from head to toe. And what's really wild is that the original plan was for a statue just 10 feet tall. But when they modeled it, they realized it would look tiny, totally dwarfed by this enormous room. So they almost doubled it in size to give it the presence it has today.
And floating right above the statue is this inscription. It's the whole mission statement of the building. It flat out calls this place a temple and says Lincoln's memory is enshrined not just here, but in the hearts of the people. Pretty powerful stuff.
But, you know, a building is just stone and marble until people give it meaning. And the Lincoln Memorial was about to become the center stage for one of the most important movements in American history.
The first big moment happens in 1939. The incredible African-American singer Marian Anderson was told she couldn't perform at a nearby concert hall simply because of the color of her skin. So, with a little help from the First Lady, Eleanor Roosevelt, she held her concert right here, on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial. And she sang to a massive, integrated crowd of 75,000 people. The symbolism was just undeniable.
And that moment really set the stage for 1963. 250,000 people flooded the National Mall for the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. And where did it all lead? Right here, to the feet of Abraham Lincoln. And it was from those steps, looking out over that sea of people, that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. delivered his I Have a Dream speech.
He was literally standing in the shadow of the man who signed the Emancipation Proclamation, calling for America to finally make good on its promise of freedom.
Now, beyond all that public history, the memorial kind of has a life of its own, full of fascinating myths, legends, and an ever-changing legacy. So what about the big man himself, the statue? Are there secret messages hidden in that Georgia marble? You hear a lot of rumors.
Okay, there are two legends you'll hear all the time. One is that the face of the Confederate General Robert E. Lee is hidden in the back of Lincoln's hair. The other, and maybe the most famous, is that Lincoln's hands are shaped to form his initials, A and L, in American Sign Language. The sculptor, Daniel Chester French, actually had a son who was deaf, which gives the theory a little bit of weight. But, as cool as these stories are, the National Park Service says, sorry, neither one is true.
Of course, the memorial's legacy is literally everywhere. You probably have a picture of it in your pocket right now, on the back of a penny or a $5 bill. And its story is still unfolding. Right now, the huge space under the memorial is being turned into a brand new museum, set to open in 2026. So there's always a new way to see this place.
So it all leaves us with this one big question. The Lincoln Memorial started as a monument, it transformed into a symbol, and then it became a stage. It has reflected America at its best, and it's held up a mirror to its deepest flaws. So as this symbol endures, what stories will this stage tell next?